We are spending a little bit of time every Sunday before Election Day learning more about the issues and the candidates. And today we meet Kendall Qualls. He is the GOP candidate in Minnesota's 3rd District, and his background is in the military, in healthcare, working as an executive. Welcome to Real Talk with Roshini, Kendall. I know we've chatted before, but it's getting down to crunch time.
Yes, thank you for having me back. I'm pretty excited.
All right. So why did you want to take this on? I mean, you could have just sailed into the sunset with the life that you've led. You've got a family, you've got a wife. Why this? Why now?
Well, it's interesting. The last couple of years, I started seeing things and hearing things in our culture that I haven't heard before, especially from elected officials. And even worse, elected officials who said or did nothing to recalibrate some of the things that really were quite disturbing. So I entered this race to take a stand for our country and to bring in authentic leadership.
All right. Well, let's get into some of the things that you do stand for. It has been a crazy year, to say the least. My guess is when you decided to run, you would not have anticipated COVID-19. You would not have anticipated the violence that we saw in Minneapolis this summer. What are your thoughts going into Election Day and why you think you bring some leadership that we don't have right now?
Well, this is interesting. So you're absolutely right. None of this stuff that we're seeing today, from the riots to the George Floyd death to COVID, was obviously wasn't even on the radar when I entered the race. But here's the thing about leadership that I received in the Army as well as in the corporate world, is that leaders are trained to expect the unexpected. And number one we do when we're in the middle of a crisis, we focus on bringing ourselves together. And right now, more than any time, we need to come together as Americans as we go through some of this crisis. And in politics, what I see from politicians, and my opponent does the same thing, we're pointing the fingers at what someone should have done better. And the reason why we're here, because someone else, it is the constant pointing fingers game. And I put this analogy in place. If we need firefighters to put out a fire, say there's 20 of them, they may have all different political backgrounds and views, but when they're putting out the fire, they're working together to put the fire out. There's plenty of time afterwards to talk about what we should have done or could have done differently. But in the midst of this crisis, we need to be together as Americans.
All right. Speaking of that, there have been a lot of contrary voices this year, specifically in the Black community. And you are a member of that community. I'll let you speak for yourself. But a headline that caught my attention and caught the attention of us at WCCO Radio in our newsroom is that Diddy, the mega multimedia platform star, is forming a new party called Our Black Party. There's already a URL, and he says it will focus on Black needs and Black issues, but it won't be partisan, so Democrats and Republicans are allowed. I'm curious about your opinion, and I'm also kind of raising an eyebrow because as a brown person, I'm thinking this party has no place for me.
Well, here's something we have to understand. So if you know the history of our country, this is not new. In the early 1900s, there's another figure that wanted to do something as well, and starting a Black political party, Marcus Garvey. Same kind of scenario, and in fact, he actually wanted to create a state in the continent of Africa. What this says more than anything is that a Democrat party that says that it's been the voice of the Black community for 50, 60, 70 years, there's a lot of people disenfranchised with that Democrat party. And our party we don't play identity politics on the Republican side. I mean, we do a poor job of communicating our values. I have to admit that. One of the things that we need to do a better job of is not just how exclusive we are, but our values are aligned with anyone that wants freedom, the opportunity, and to be judged as an individual, not a collective group. And that's important. So it's identity politics at its worst, and to be honest with you.
So chances are you are not going to leave the Republican Party to join Diddy's party.
Look, I joined the Republican Party when I was 18 years old. Trust me, I've seen what the Democrat Party was and what it was all about when I was in Harlem as a kid. And I went back to visit my mother every year. Even after I left Harlem to live with my father in Oklahoma, I went back every year to see my mother. The only thing that changed was the political connected got richer and the people got poorer. And that has not changed in every big city that we were involved in. So it was easy for me to make a decision of where my values lined up and my goals and aspirations lined up. And it was with the Republican Party, and I did it in 18. So I marched to the beat of a different drummer. I'm not concerned about where the crowd goes, because eventually they're seeing the disenfranchisement of it already. Not only do you have Diddy's program, but you also have Blexit with Candace Owens. You got a lot of disenfranchised Black people up with the Democrat Party. Even the founder of Black Entertainment Television, Robert Johnson, is supporting President Trump over Vice President Biden.
You are listening to Real Talk with Roshini on WCCO Radio, on the radio.com app, on the stream, as well as live on Facebook and Twitter. We are chatting with Kendall Qualls. He is the GOP candidate for Minnesota's 3rd District, the seat currently held by Dean Phillips. We talked with Dean Phillips, Congressman Phillips, last Sunday. And we're not taking any questions right now, but I will open up the phone lines and the text lines after we come back from break. So 651-989-9226 if you have any comments. All right, so you speak for one Black man. I'm not asking you to speak for all Black people. It seems like there are a lot of people who are giving us the message that they're speaking for all Black people. But let's talk about white people for a moment. It also seems to me that a lot of white people are feeling guilty right now. And I'm going to say, I don't know that they deserve to. What are your thoughts on that?
Agreed. Again, here's a scenario. And my opponent did the same thing. Here's an issue. We have Ilhan Omar that basically says our country is racist, that we need to go to socialism. She speaks ill against Israel and Jewish people. My opponent says nothing. But when it comes out to race and racism, he basically tells Minnesotans that they're guilty of white privilege. These are his words, not mine. And he gives them a reading list to get better at it, to deal with this white privilege that they have. And I totally rebunk that. I totally refuse to accept that terminology or that narrative that the progressive left wants to project. Number one is false. It's a false narrative. The biggest issue that we have in the Black community, and I will speak for the Black community from this perspective because the facts are the facts, and we have 50 years of longitudinal data to prove it. We suffer from an issue of fatherless homes, and we didn't used to live like this. I know my family's been collateral damage for this. We didn't used to live like this. When Martin Luther King was marching, nearly 80% of Black children were in 2-parent family homes, nearly 80%. We embraced the social programs of the left that they were pushing in the Black community, not knowing the collateral damage that it would have. And every decade since then, since the 60s and the early 70s, 2-parent families declined 10 percentage points every decade. Right now in Hennepin County is roughly around 20%. And Roshini, here's the tragedy right now, and I say this with the Democrat Party. We have over 200 nonprofit programs in Minneapolis itself addressing the poor Black community. Not one of them are focused on reinforcing marriage or bringing families together. And when poor mothers want to send their children from failing public schools to a charter school, the Democrat Party impedes that every step of the way.
Well, you've given us a lot of food for thought. What is your message, Kendall Qualls, to people who say, look, you can't get around the fact that America has had systemic racism? First of all, do you believe that? And then what is your message to people who say that is the case? Because that's a term I'm seeing all over the headlines. Sure.
Listen, here's the thing. For people to feel guilty about this, what it tells you that there's a genuine concern and an issue, and they want to do something to help. So to answer the question, yes, has the country had systemic racism? Absolutely. My father lived through it. And Jim Crow South, he was from South Carolina. He lived through it. I lived through it, and early in my age, I was an all-Black, elementary school and bused to an all-white school. I know what it feels like. But the issues we're dealing with today are very, very different. And here's what I'll tell you, is that this country is always, it's one of these scenarios like you hear in the business community, constant improvement. We're always striving to get better. But for a lot of those people that to think about this just for a minute. If you've been here for a long time, your parents have been here, grandparents, if you were to tell your grandparents how far we progressed in the last 50 to 60 years, they would be shocked. We forget about the progress we made, and every time there's something bad that happens, the left and the media holds that up as the narrative rather than the exception. Do we have racists in this country? Absolutely we do. Are we a racist country? Absolutely not.
And let's be clear, anyone, regardless of color of your skin, I don't care if you're green, you can be racist, regardless of where you are.
I totally agree.
Right. So I want to get into this concept of brown versus black, black versus brown. And as a brown person, I can say I'm personally feeling this in the last 6 months or so. Do you think this call for Black Lives Matter is, which I believe in Black Lives Do Matter. In fact, I believe all lives matter. Do you think that that call and the attention to that right now is hurting other minority groups like Native Americans, like brown people, Asians, other groups, even people who are veterans or other groups that also are fighting for rights? What are your thoughts about that? Because I've been really thinking about it and wanting to ask you this for a while.
Sure. So let me just put this frame it in this construct, if you will. First of all, what's unfortunate is that most Americans have never served in the military. That's less than 1%. Or even if you were on a collegiate athletic team, when you put on a uniform, the outer skin color really takes secondary position because the uniform takes the primary position. That uniform of either Army or if you're on a soccer team, you look at your teammates differently because you're all on the same team accomplishing the same goals. What we don't do enough in this country is understand that all of us, we wear an invisible uniform. And yes, it's red, white, and blue. It may sound kind of, Boy Scoutish, if you will. But that is the fact. We focus too much on the differences, on not what we have in common and our common good for our society, for our families, and for our country. And to your point, this issue, and again, Black Lives Matter. Look, to your point, all lives matter. For Roshini, the reason I like you because you have intelligent conversation. You got a great program. Your ethnicity is a part of you, but is it your primary you?
I'm an American. I'm a patriot.
Individual first.
Right. I'm a patriot and I believe in the Constitution and I believe in consistency. And I'm seeing a lot of inconsistency around us from everyone, man, woman, binary, non-binary, whatever. I'm seeing a lot of inconsistency.
Well, here's what I want to do. For everyone that's confused and like, where do we stand? Where do I fit? Come and join us because you're accepted here just as you are, regardless of your skin color. Because you know what? We didn't used to have such a primary focus on this, even at the worst of our times. Black Americans, I didn't say they thrived. As a culture, we were together more during the worst of times than we are during these times. It's so ironic. We had three things in the Black culture. We had family, we had God, and we had a strong need and desire for education. Today, we have none of those. And that's what I want to focus on, not just from the Black community, for all of us.
It also seems that many of the Black leaders of the past and near past, present day even, didn't believe in violence. I mean, the real credible ones and the ones that got thousands, if not millions of people on their side and influenced all of us. Because let me tell you, brown people are a true minority in this country. Sometimes we're not even counted, but it is because of Black people that brown people and natives have more rights. So there is a big debt. Let me be clear about that. But I think we maybe need to go back to the corniness of we are red, white, and blue. It is about the flag. It is about one nation, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I want to remind people, it's wonderful talking with you, Kendall Qualls. We spoke with Dean Phillips last Sunday on Real Talk with Roshini. You can check out both of these conversations on my show page on the audio side, and both of them will live now on the WCCO Radio and Roshini Rajkumar Facebook pages. Also give a little preview, both Kendall Qualls and Congressman Dean Phillips will be on WCCO airwaves, on the radio, and all of our digital platforms, Facebook Live, the stream, radio.com, for a debate, 1 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday. So tune in to your medium of choice and check them out together. You've heard from them separately on this show, and have fun these next 2 weeks plus, Kendall Qualls.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.